Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I know it's been a long time since a lot of y'all have got to see me, let alone hear me talk or go over anything. Today I'm calling this video In the Mind of a Medium because, quite frankly, I don't know what I am, which is why it's slashed with psychic. I've always had experiences, and that's what this video is going to be about. I've always, since I was a very little girl, have had experiences that other people do not have, and so I have made a list of things dating back to when I was 2-3 years old that have kind of proved to me that there is a realm that not all of us are privy to. So, as I started getting these feelings lately, especially in September, I got kind of a feeling that something was going to happen in October, especially this October. Not only do we have 2 full moons, Halloween night is a full blue moon. For those of you who don't keep up with the moon and the phases and the effects that it can have on literally everything, there's plenty of YouTube to check it out. I also want to bring up the fact that we are all energy. This planet is a ball of energy. We are all balls of energy, and if you didn't go to 6th grade science and learn these things, there are other YouTube videos that are out there that you have access to. So today, first disclaimer, I am not making this video in hopes for credibility, clout, whatever bad things people think that people make videos for. I am simply making this video because people need to know about these things, and I feel like a lot more people are starting to wake up. A lot more people are starting to notice that they have capabilities, but they don't know what to do with it, including, you know, so these things have followed me my entire life, going way back to my childhood, and then just this weekend, someone had a witnessed something with me, and I mean, for her, she was so terrified that she was using me as a shield. But then when she got to hear what I've been hearing my whole life, I've never seen anyone's eyes open and fill with tears so fast. So just let me start there. Like I said, this is 10 happenings that have happened to me that have proved there is another realm, there is another world that not all of us have access to. That being said, any hate comments will be deleted. However, if you have made it this far, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. At the end of the video, feel free to comment. You know, I want to hear back from you guys. That's my whole point in doing this, is to get it out there, to reach people, and to help people better understand what's going on right now, especially this month. Happy Halloween. It is a lifestyle, and I have a lot of people around me. I have a lot of acquaintances that they need this kind of information, this kind of support, and to feel like they're not alone. And so I feel like it's my job to kind of shed some light on the darkness if that makes sense. So, without further ado, let's get to it. However, this may get weird. This may get creepy. This may get emotional. But most of all, it may spook you out. So, go ahead, grab a snack, grab a drink, grab a smoke, grab whatever you want, maybe light a couple candles, because this could get scary. So, this list goes back to when I was 2 years old. And I know I'm going to have a lot of people out there that are going to be like, you can't remember when you were 2 and 3 years old. You can't remember things like that. You know, most people can't remember being 5 or older, and that's just simply not true. First of all, it is possible. It is rare, but it is very possible. Second of all, excuse me, my lashes, my hair, and my everything is getting on my nerves. So, as I was saying, this has gone back all the way until I was 2 years old. But it's taking me a lot of years and a lot of research and studying myself to realize what was happening. And it even took my neighbor the other day to realize what was going on, what I was experiencing, what I was trying to tell her. Okay, and so in order to make this video, though, I had to go back. And if you guys understood the mud and the muck and the skeletons in the closet of my mind that I had to dig through and dig up just to get these memories, and then to find out that the memories that I had from whenever I was a child, as I'm like rehearsing these memories in my mind, I'm finding out that these aren't even, that was a happening itself. I had chalked it up to something completely different, but it did, in fact, it was a real spiritual thing that had happened. So, here are a list of 10 things that have happened to me since I was a little girl. Come closer. Okay, let's see. We're gonna call number 1. Sorry, I'm not the best videoer, photographer, whatever. Anyhow, we are going to call number 1 knock knock. So when I was a child, I was sitting in my living room. Now we live in the middle of nowhere. Okay, we live on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And this land, to me, is very sacred. It is very important to me, my family, my tribe. My grandmother had her house next door. We have my house. On the other side of my house is my other uncle. On the other side of my grandmother's house is another uncle. There's an aunt in between. There's an uncle in between in the back. So it, at one time, it was all family owned. And then the only other people on the land were another family that they owned like the rest of the road, the Andersons. And I'm gonna try to kind of keep people's identity you know, somewhat private, but I can only do that so much. And a lot of these people have passed away by now, so, you know, let's go ahead and just call it what it is. They were Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. And whenever I was a little girl, there used to be a corner store down the street that me and my older sister would go to buy firecrackers, candy, cigarettes, whatever. And then we would come home. And I mean, it's only like a quarter-mile walk. So we would go down there just when we got bored, and our parents would give us a couple bucks and we'd just walk down to the store. So going down there, it ended up being on Halloween itself. I'm sitting on the floor in my living room a few days prior when I hear a knock on my door. Mind you, my parents are very much like me. If some of you guys were to come out here, you might consider this a little isolating, maybe lonely. It's definitely not for everybody, but to me, it is a peaceful fairyland, and I'm just in my little teepee living my own little life out here. So as I was sitting there watching cartoons, as children do, I end up getting a knock on the door, and it's just knock knock, and I'm like, okay, at this time I'm 2, maybe 3 years old, so I figure, you know what, you know, my mom will get it, my dad will get it, somebody will come up. They didn't. I continued watching Looney Tunes or whatever I was watching whenever I heard, again, knock knock. So this time a little more aggressive. So I get up. I'm not going to cry in this video. I promise I'm not going to cry in this video. So I get up. I go to the door. I open the door. And there's a very large man at my front door. He's very tall, and he has a very big belly, which he's wearing an apron over that's covered in blood. Now, all he says is, "Are your folks home?" I backed away, I closed the door, and I ran to my mom. And I'm like, "Mom, somebody's knocking on the door." Well, my dad ends up going to answer it. No, my mom goes up there and she goes to answer it. So she opens the door, and there's nobody there. There are acres to see around us. I mean, I'm on over 5 acres, I'll put it that way. Okay, there are acres where we can see, you know, whatever's going on. So, I go back to doing what I was doing, and I sit down, and I get comfortable again, and I'm watching my show. And you know, like when kids are watching their shows, you can barely get them to stop. I mean, it takes everything to get them to stop. I mean, I remember having to be like yelled at, and then I would zoom out of whatever show I was watching and pay attention to whoever was calling me. But I had sat there and I was watching my show, but I wasn't in that like trance state anymore. I was almost waiting for another knock when it happened. This time it was a little harder. Knock, knock. So I get up and I go to the door again, and I open the door, and it's the same man, and he says a little more affirmatively, "Are your folks home?" By this time, I'm kind of shaken by the guy. I mean, I'm 2-3 years old. He has an apron on. He's covered in blood. He's really big, really big, bigger than my dad. So this time, I go to tell my parents, and I'm like, "There's a guy, he's back at the door, and he's asking for you guys." So by this time, my dad's had enough, and when my dad has enough, I mean, it's game over. So what does he do? He's like, "Sit down, I'll go get it." So he goes to the front door to open it, and again, there's nobody there. Okay, Halloween night comes. I go down to the corner store, and on my way back, there used to be an old couple, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, and I have a feeling, I can't really confirm it, but I have this feeling that she was sick she had some kind of sickness going on. And maybe I could be wrong, but I just feel like she had some kind of sickness. They were very old, and she would always ask me if I wanted to come in and play. She had a cabinet that was like full of toys, and then on the top of the cabinet set like the best candies, like the cream savers, the strawberry and white cream savers, you know what I mean? I don't even know if they make those anymore, but man, those were the best. And then she also had the little Werthers, you know, and then she would have like the foamy peanuts or whatever. But when any kid is offered candy, especially a Ziploc baggie full of candy, yes, I want to come. So me and my sister would go over there all the time, and we would play with the toys that she had for us, and then she would send us home with, like I said, bags full of candy. So this time I go inside and we start playing, and since it's Halloween, she's like, you know, I bought you girls, you know, extra candy, you know, feel free to have as much as you want, just make sure to get home before dark, before your folks get upset. And we're like, okay. After some time goes by, my older sister is like, Kelly, I'm gonna go to the house, make sure that you're home before dark. And I'm like, okay. So I keep going on about my business, and mind you, this is on Halloween day. I can't stress that enough. When I go up to her, and she's looking through a old photo album, and she's sifting through it, and she's showing me her family, and she's talking about, you know, what they used to do and what, you know, when I see the man that's been at my house in her photo album. So I'm like, that's the man. That's the man. And she's like, what's the man? Who? What? And I'm like, that guy's been coming to my house, and he always asks for my parents, and when my parents come to the door, he doesn't talk to them. And he keeps doing it, and he keeps coming, and only I know when he comes. And I even asked his name, and his name is Cowan. He comes to my house, and he won't talk to my parents, but he keeps asking for him. What does he want? Like, what does he want? When she sets me off of her lap and turns away from me, as I'm older now, I realize that she had probably started to cry. So Mr. Anderson is guiding her away from the table. He may have just like heard what happened, and he's guiding her away from the table whenever he tells me, okay, Kelly, it's getting dark. You need to go, you know, you need to go home to your folks. And I'm like, okay. I didn't get my answer, but I got all my candy, so I'm gonna go back home. So I go home. I didn't think about it again. A couple days goes by. I go back down to the corner store. This time I'm by myself. Nobody's with me. When Miss Anderson comes outside, I think she saw me going to the store. Miss Anderson comes outside, and she comes to the fence, and she's like, Kelly. And I'm like, hey. And she's like, do you want to come inside today? Do you want to come inside and play? You know, like, I have candy. And I know, like, it's the creepiest way to get a child to come into your house, but these were really nice people. I mean, if we needed a tractor, they helped us out with that. If we needed any gardening tools, they helped us out with that. And, you know, like, I mean, they were really good people. And so I go into her house, and I go straight for the cabinet where all the toys and candy are, when she says, no, baby, honey, come and talk to me. I want to ask you a couple questions. And at this time I'm thinking, like, am I in trouble? Did I say something wrong? What did I do? So on and so forth. When she sits me back on her lap, she opens up her photo album, and she opens it to the guy again. And she said, what did you say the other day? What were you trying to tell me? And I said, that guy comes to my house. He only knocks 2 times. He asks if my folks are home, and when I go get them, he won't talk to them. He leaves. And she said, how many times has this happened? And I said, it's happened like 2 or 3 times, but one day he kept doing it over and over. So she tells me at a very young age, his name is Colin McCowan, and he is her nephew that had passed away 10 years ago on that day, and proceeds to ask if I would like to take a ride with her and we'll go to the store. So I'm like, sure, whatever. I was like, I have to be home before dark, and she's like, we have all day. So I get in her car and she takes me to the local cemetery. She doesn't take me to a store, she takes me to the cemetery. And I'm 2, 3 years old at this time. I know what a cemetery is, but I don't know what I'm doing there, whatever. When I take off walking and she's letting me lead the way, I take off walking and I walk straight to Colin McCowan's gravestone before I even knew how to read. And that's the wrap up of that story. I got home, I got safe. She said a prayer with me right there at the gravesite. And as I'm older, I'm realizing that that's what she was doing. That's what had happened. Okay? So we're going to call on number 2. Number 2, we're going to call dream manipulation. I want a lot of you to pay attention to your dreams. They are absolutely tied into just everything. And I've always been a very vivid dreamer. I've always had extremely vivid dreams. I've always kind of tried to interpret them. And whenever I was a child, I was able to manipulate them. Whenever I say manipulate, I mean that I had a dream of a little girl. She had a very important message that she was trying to tell me. This is the one. This is the one. Hopefully I tell these stories in order. As a child, I could go back into the dream if I woke up, because this little girl is trying to tell me a message, and this little girl is under a bed, and I'm trying to get to her under the bed to understand what's going on, like what she's trying to say to me when I wake up. But I had learned the ability to get myself back to sleep, get myself back into the same dream, and get back to that girl and be able to talk to her and get the message that she was telling me. Now, some people can still do this, but I lost the ability over time. As we grow up, we block certain things out. We have certain doubts. We have, it is what it is. But, in another instance, I was dreaming that I was on a bridge, the bridge by my house. It's a huge bridge that has a very fall drop to a huge river. And in the dream, someone was trying to push me off of that bridge. But in the dream, I realized that I can make a bungee cord appear, and I wrapped it around my waist. And so when the person pushed me off of the bridge, I was having the time of my life because I was bungee jumping. So I was safe. So I had figured out ways to do that. If I was scared of anything in a dream, I remember trying to unzip someone. Okay, so in that dream, I didn't realize who the little girl was. I don't remember what exact message she was trying to tell me. but I go on about my business. But like I said, I've always had very, very vivid dreams. And in my dreams, I have always been able to tell that something is going to happen in the future. And I've always known that my family holds a lot of history of being able to dream the future, especially on my mother's side. My mother does it, her mother did it, my sisters do it. It's just something that all of us do. When I was a child, like, I had a, you know, I had been warned and kind of like heard that all the women in the family could kind of tell the future through dreams. So I took that. So we're gonna get to number 3, which I have decided to call Here Piggy Piggy. And this is where the dreams start getting pretty lucid, pretty terrifying for a child, if I'm totally honest. So in this dream, multiple dreams, there was always a man chasing me, and I can only compare him to Freddy Krueger. And I don't know to this day if it's because my subconscious mind, because at this time I'm about 3 or 4. I don't know if my subconscious mind had maybe taken, you know, all of my surroundings. Maybe my older siblings were watching Freddy Krueger in the background and I, you know, learned about it that way, but, and that's why I was dreaming of this person or what, but I just knew that this man looks like Freddy Krueger. He's wearing this striped vest. He doesn't have like a knife hand or anything, but he is wearing this striped sweater, striped vest, striped sweater. So, I am always running from him. And I usually wake up. And in one of the dreams, he finally caught me and was drowning me in the pool that he caught me in. I woke up terrified, but I had totally forgotten about it. I totally forgot about it. You know, children, they live in the moment. Something bad happens, okay, they turn on to something good, and that's what they want to stay more focused on. So, like I said, time goes by, I go back to sleep whenever I have a dream that I'm laying in my bed. I'm dreaming, but in my dream I'm laying in my bed when this man walks into my room and turns on the light, and it's the same man. But this time I have nowhere to run to. I'm in my bedroom, and he is entering my room and turns on the light to let me know that it's him. So I start scooting as far as I can back. I'm sure I was kicking and screaming for help, and you know, even I remember in the dreams trying to scream, but nothing was coming out, trying to run, but I couldn't go anywhere. And in the dream, I was scooting back. I remember the sheets flying. I was kicking. I was trying to get away from this man. I didn't know who he was, why he was after me, what, when he finally grabs a hold of my ankle and rips me to the end of the bed, pulls a pocket knife out of his pocket and says, "Here, piggy, piggy," and slices, in the dream, my toe off. When I wake up, I'm frantic. I don't know what's just happened. I don't know what's going on. Like, I mean, I had gotten to a point to where I didn't want to sleep alone. But that particular morning, I removed the sheets to look down, and I had a cut on my pinky toe from the toe closest to it that wrapped around my pinky toe. And it was a slice. Could that have been there before? Possibly. But trying to walk on that all day is how I remember what happened to my toe. What the pain that I was in trying to walk on that toe. Okay? And I want you to keep this guy in mind. Okay? Because he doesn't disappear throughout this video. So, sorry. So, on to number 4. Imaginary friend or guardian angel? I will let you guys decide. And please feel free to share any of your stories or any feedback, unless it is hateful, and it will be removed. So, in this dream, I'm in my room playing on the floor. It's hardwood floors, I believe. And in this house that we were in now was a completely different house. And you could run in circles, like go through one doorway and enter the living room, come through this other doorway and you're in the kitchen, and you could run in circles. And so I'm sitting on the bedroom floor when this little girl comes up to me and she says, "Put a cross on your door." Because I'm coloring in the dream. And I'm like, "No, what are you talking about? I'll get in trouble. What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Put a cross on your door." And she's the same age as me. She's a child. Tiny, cherub-looking girl. When she says, put a cross on your door. And I keep telling her, no, you're gonna get me in trouble. Like, I can't, I'll get in trouble. And she says, okay. And I wake up. My day goes on. I go outside. We had this huge swimming pool that was also very eerie because things were constantly dying in the pool. But anyways, I go on about my day. I'm playing with my brother, trying to tell him what's going on. He's not listening to anything I say. He probably thinks I'm crazy because I want to sleep with him every night. I don't want to sleep in my own bed. I want to be by him, but regardless, I was, trying to tell him, like, there's this man and he's chasing me and I don't want to be alone. I had gotten to a point where I would wait until my sister would fall asleep on the couch, and like where her legs bend, I would curl up in the space of just her legs, so that I didn't have to be alone whenever I was sleeping. When all of a sudden, I'm playing in the house, we had parakeets, or small birds, in the cages, and I'm by the bird cage whenever I hear that alarming tone from my mother's voice scream, "Kelly Ray!" I'm in trouble. I knew I was in trouble. So what do? I hurry up and run over there, and she also called my brother's name at the time. So we both walk over there, and she points down to the bottom of my door, my mother does, and she says, "Who did this?" And at the bottom of the door, the best way I can explain it is it looked like someone took a key and carved in a cross at the bottom of the door, the very bottom of the door. My brother didn't know about that dream, but I immediately blamed him. I knew it wasn't me, and he took a hiding for it. I mean, he got hided for it because I blamed him. I was like, it had to have been him. He did it. I didn't do that. Like, I swear I didn't do it because I knew I would get in trouble. He got in trouble. He got in deep trouble. And for that person, if this video ever reaches you, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know that it was you, and I really, I'm sorry, and I'm glad that now I have figured out that, I always had siblings, so I could never have imaginary friends, but I definitely know that that was an angel, because after that cross was carved into my door, I never dreamt of that man again. I never had to deal with him again. And that was amazing for my dreams. So we are on to number 5. And this one is going to get real, and this is where I let you guys know stuff could get creepy. So, the reason that I call number 5 the boogeyman exists. So, around this time, I'm about 4 or 5 years old. We're living in this house that you can run circles in. I had a stepbrother at the time. And out back, we had a huge patio that led to a huge pool. And my mom has always been a hard gardener, so huge garden, the picnic table and everything. So one summer day, we're all out back swimming, planning like a picnic type of dinner. Everything was a really good time. Well, I'm there, my sisters are there, my stepbrother's there, and we're all swimming and having a great time. When I get out of the pool and it's time to start getting ready, when a man shows up at my house, and the man that shows up at my house is the man with the striped sweater. I believe he was my older sister's acquaintance or friend. I mean, they had friends over, we had friends over, my parents had friends over, like we were doing the whole, you know, summertime backyard grill. When I realized that it's him, I immediately was scared and tried to keep my distance from him. I was in the pool whenever I saw him, and I got out of the pool to go away from him. So I went over to the picnic area, went over to the picnic table, and was getting ready to eat. So I figured I was away from him. When I sit down to eat, a man comes from behind me and rips my hair back, where, like that. He rips the back of my hair. I don't know if nobody saw, or this creep was just so sneaky about doing that to children. I don't know. So I stopped eating dinner and I got back in the pool to get away from him. I asked my brother to come and swim with me because I don't want to be alone. He doesn't know why. Nobody knows why. Nobody understands that I've been dreaming about this guy. And, you know, as a child, you go from, you know, moment to moment. You live in the moment. Well, little did I know this man was going to follow me into the pool. I stayed on one side while I saw him getting in on the other side. Now, as a child, this was my pool in my backyard, so I had a lot of experience. Luckily, at the age of 4, I knew how to swim and I knew how to hold my breath for very long periods of time. However, just like the dream I had about the man, this man pulls me by my hair and is holding me underwater against my will. I'm a 4-year-old child. Now I can hold my breath for a really long time, especially underwater. However, when someone is holding you underwater, 1, you're panicking. 2, you're frightened. 3, you're struggling. You are kicking, trying to do everything you can to get away from this person, to get out of their grip. However, I'm a tiny child, and this grown man or teenager, which is pretty much a grown man to me, has full control of me and is holding me underwater. I start convulsing, thinking that I'm going to die right then and there, when I finally come above water and I'm hearing people tell him that he needs to leave. The validation of that right there was enough for me to start keeping track of my dreams, keeping track of what's in my dreams, and actually learning to use other people's dreams in order to communicate with them. And when you think about that, it's not that far-fetched. I mean, psychiatrists all over the world use sleep meditation to get what they want out of the patient. I mean, throughout the whole, 50s, 60s, 70s, our own government was injecting us with LSD, or giving us LSD, and then would put us to sleep for 21, 22 hours and would repeat the same things over and over in order to completely erase someone's memory. When they wake up on the 23rd day, they don't know who they are, they don't know their names, they don't know anything about themselves, and the government has just deleted everything about them. But that's a whole nother video. So, that's learning to keep track of my dreams and learning that maybe I could possibly interfere with other people's dreams and pay attention to other people's dreams, that could even give me even more clarity. So I'm hitting about 4 or 5 years old now. This next one brings me to the wedged skirt. So at this time I'm about 5 years old. This one's kind of entertaining. This time I'm about 5 years old, and I say I'm about 5 years old because my mom had always gone to get us brand new clothes at the beginning of the year, and like, you know, the racks that like Ross, Target, basically any retail store will have a rack that they hang their clothes on. Well, my mom had one of those racks in her room that was for our brand new clothes. So, I think it was picture day. It was picture day, so that was a very special day for me, my older sister, and it was my older sister's job to always get me ready in the mornings, always make sure that, you know, I was on time, I had my hair brushed, teeth brushed, good to go, caught the bus on time. But this particular morning, It's picture day. My mom has us matching, okay? We're wearing, what are we wearing? We're wearing plaid skirts with knee-high socks, the little like ballerina type shoes, and some shirts that probably had the biggest sleeves you could ever imagine. To my mom in the 90s, the bigger the sleeves, the bigger the hat, the cuter the outfit. So my sister gets me ready. She gets my hair done, she gets my clothes on, she gets my shoes on, she helps me, everything. But then it comes time for her to get dressed, and she's totally dressed except she can't find her skirt. But we had both had our outfits taken off of the rack and laid on the floor, so they were in order so we could get dressed. Well, she had gotten me dressed and she was totally done. She had her hair done, teeth brushed, everything. She had her shirt on, even the socks on, but she could not find her skirt. And these were like outfits that like had the snaps in the middle where the skirt like goes up over the thing. So she's like running around in a onesie, and she's like, what, like 9 by this time. She's running around the house in a onesie. Everybody knew if mom is sleeping, or if any adults are sleeping, you do not wake them up. So I had an idea. By this time, I was so aware of my dreams, and I was keeping track of them and manipulating them so much to work better in my favor. I kind of wanted to see what would happen if I went to another person that's sleeping in order to get an answer. So my sister's freaking out, and she's like, I have everything, but the bus is about to be here. I can't find my skirt. Like, what are we gonna do? It's picture day. Mom's gonna freak out. Da 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 da. She just bought us all these clothes, everything. I mean, she was having a hard time. So I walked into my mom's room, and I as I always did, by this time I had figured out ways to talk to her in her sleep, that I could get answers from her that I wanted, and she really had no recollection of it. Mom, if you're watching, I'm so sorry, but I did this for a long time. So I walk up to the bedside, and I am really nervous, but I'm scared that I'm gonna get in trouble, but I'm even more scared that we're about to miss the bus, we're about to miss picture day, and my mom spent a lot of time and effort on it. So I step up to her bedside, and I'm like leaning over here like the weird kid that I am, and I'm like, Mom, where is Stacy's skirt? And she doesn't wake up, and it's taken a few minutes, and I'm like, what's so I ask again, Mom, in a really easy voice, Mom, where's Stacy's skirt? To which she replied in her sleep, it's wedged behind the door. Okay, like I said, our outfits were put on the floor in order, right next to each other. So I'm like, door? What door? So I tell my sister, it's behind a door, it's behind a door. We start freaking out, and we're looking behind every single door. What door? What door? It's behind a door. We're freaking out and freaking out. What had happened was, in the minutes that my sister had gotten me ready, my mom's asleep this entire time. In the minutes that my sister is getting me ready, she had pushed the door open to go back into our room, which had scooted her skirt behind the door. But every time that we would like exit the room or like try to close the door, we couldn't see it. So we go back into the room and we just kept wedging the skirt farther and farther behind the door. How my mother could know this when she was asleep the entire time? Maybe you guys can tell me. The next one I would like to call overwhelmed in church. My mom has always been a very spiritual, biblical person. We have been to all kinds of churches. We have been to every kind of church, from Baptist to Pentecostal to Catholic, which is where this happens. This is my first time going to a Catholic church. I'm used to going to like a Southern Baptist church or, a Pentecostal church or just whatever. Nowadays they have these like life churches that are non-denominational, whatever. Well, I'm used to going to my regular, Baptist church, where when you walk in, like, there's music off one way, everybody's greeting each other, everybody's getting back in touch with each other, like, hey, how you doing? Hey, great. Like, everybody is communicating, catching up, da-da, and the, preachers are going over what they're going to talk about, whatever. Well, I guess for some reason this day, my mom wanted to go to church so bad that she took me for my first time into my first Catholic church. Now, I'm not a Catholic. I'm not going to say anything about Catholics. If that's your thing, if that's what keeps you, good. However, when I walked in the door and I realized that you could hear a pin drop, there were very faint Sims in the background, and then there was this really tall dude. I mean, there was just like rows and rows and rows and rows and rows and rows and rows leading up to the front of the church. There's stained glass everywhere. I mean, just a giant building, very cathedral-like. And I was just in awe, and I was like, why is everyone being so quiet, and why is there no music playing, and like, why is everybody just walking in and like taking a seat and being really quiet? And I guess, like, I don't know, it's like a whole thing that they do in Catholic churches. And then there's this, man in all white at the front with this giant hat, and I'm just like, wow, everything is really big here. And the stained glass going all the way up the building was just, powerful, especially for my first time, and I'm a child. So I go with her and I sit down, and I don't know if I was like listening to what he had to say, but it was just me and my mom this time, and she's on my left hand side and another lady is on my right hand side, and she's like a couple feet over. When all of a sudden I get a memory of my biological father that by this time we had moved away from. And I just started bawling, just full-fledged bawling. And my mom's like, what is it? Shh. Like, we're in a Catholic church, you can't do that. Like, what is it? I'll do anything, just please be quiet. And I'm like, I miss my dad. Like, I miss my dad. Where's my dad? Because I had gone from, 3 years to now I'm like 6 years old. Maybe 5 years, but still, it had been enough of a time to where what made me cry, I think, was the fact that I couldn't remember what he looked like. I got this memory that, wait, I have another dad. I have a real dad. And I couldn't even put a face to him. So yeah, it was heartbreaking for me. And I just told her, like, I miss my dad. Where is he? And the lady next to me offered me a piece of gum to get me to quiet down. And next thing I knew, my mom was arranging for me to visit my father on the weekends, who I ultimately stayed with, and he raised me for the best he could. So that was another, thing. I don't know if it was because I was in a church. It was a very holy, spiritual place. To Catholics, the Catholic Church is probably about as sacred as you can get, but I knew that I was there for spiritual reasons, but I guess because I couldn't really, concentrate on the priest, these other things started kicking into my mind. And I remember, the last time I went to church, I had a different dad. And so it just poured out of me in that church. I also don't know if it could have been a spirit that reminded me, or maybe an angel that reminded me of what had happened. So, light at the end of the tunnel, again, I started seeing my father more every weekend. I'm a daddy's girl. I always have been, probably always will be. And she really helped. So, that brings me to another thing about my mom. She has always been very crafty and very in her own spiritual realm. She has amazing talents and amazing practices and amazing, I wish I could do half the things that she's able to do. And my family, they're all very spiritual people, and even people who are in my family that weren't always spiritual people have kind of morphed into these spiritual people to where, nowadays if I ask my mom, if it's the end of the world, what's the first thing you're gonna need? What's the one and only thing? You can only take one, maybe two things. What are you gonna take? Her first answer is gonna be the Bible. And then she will worry about food and water. Okay, she's always been that way. However, there was a time that she was the white witch of the family. Just like the rest of my family has been calling me. I've like I said, I have been called the white witch. I have been called the tribal witch. I have been called, native voodoo practicer. That's a whole nother video, coming up, but it's just a lot of spirituality. But I never knew until I grew up that my mother used to dabble in certain things as well. And though she's a devout Christian, she's a devout God lover, I'll put it that way. She has these practices, and I wish that she would have tuned in and would have let me know what's going on, so that when these things happen, I wasn't so confused, frightened, or anything like that. Because now I'm on this journey by myself of figuring all this stuff out, hunting, listening. I have got devices now, and I'm trying to be a beam of light in the darkness. That's my hope. So, number 8, which I think it's also really funny that number 7 happened to be called overwhelmed in church, because 7, everybody that knows me knows that 7 is my number. It's my spiritual number. my child was born on the 7th day in room 7 on the 7th floor, weighing exactly 7 pounds. He was definitely a spiritual gift to me. But 7 has just always been, and maybe I've always considered it a godly number. It's just always been a godly number for me. Maybe you guys have like lucky numbers or, something like that. And if you do, comment below so I can see. So, yeah, I would love to hear about it. So number 8 brings me to Princess Diana's death. In my family, between me and my mother, we had 2 people that we really, really followed. They were our princesses. They were our light. They were who I wanted to be and who my mother wanted to be, and that was 2 people. The first one was Princess Diana, and the second one was JonBenet Ramsey. For JonBenet, I would like to do my own video, and if you would be interested in me doing a video specifically on JonBenet, please let me know, because something in my heart and my gut is just telling me that I need to do a JonBenet video. So as a child, I really looked up to her. I had every single magazine that she was in. I watched every single pageant she was in. It was my thing. I wanted to be just like her. I wanted my mom to do my hair like her. I wanted my makeup done like her. I wanted flippers. If y'all don't know what flippers are, they're the like fake teeth that make your teeth just look perfect. I still want some. But anyways, I wanted to be her. And watching my mom love Princess Diana so much, I wanted to be her as well. It was a few of them, but they were very important human beings to us. We felt, and it wasn't just us, the world felt Princess Diana's energy. The woman walked in to epidemics and shook hands with hundreds of AIDS patients and treated them like they were royalty, and good on her for wanting nothing to do with. That's a whole nother video, and I'll cover that too if you want. But it's just, it's sad. It was really sad. However, this night, I'm about 7 years old, 8 years old. I was old enough to where every weekend me and my sister would go to the skating rink. Like, that was our jam. All of our friends went to the skating rink. All of her friends went to the skating rink. Her little boyfriends went to the skating rink. I was just there for the pickles and the skating. But it was a blast. That's what we did. Every weekend we went skating. And so we get to the skating rink, I would say about 6 o'clock. Because they did a thing where they were open like 5 to 10. And for Saturday nights. And, and that gave my parents a little time to themselves or whatever. However, in my family, when any death comes, we have a practice of covering any mirrors. We cover mirrors. We disable phones. We mourn. We mourn so that we can heal. Okay, we acknowledge what's happened so that we can get better. And if you don't take that time to do that, because like my father, he's the type of person that I've never seen him affected by death at all. And it's crazy because he just barely missed death himself, but even him lately, he's really waking up. And that's what this video is all about. I feel that people are finally starting to wake up, and I want to help guide people through this awakening. So that night we go to the skating rink. We're not there for no more than an hour, and I start having this feeling of dread that I need to get to my mom. I need to get to my mom. And I just told y'all, I'm a daddy's girl. But this particular night, I just had this heavy feeling that I needed to get back to my mom. I needed to get to my mom. Something's going on. I need my mom. And so I called my dad and I told him I need to come home. And at first he's like, Kelly, I'm not making a trip right back up there. Like, you chose to go skating. I'm not going to make a second trip back up there to come and get your sister. That's too many. Why? And I'm like, I want mom. I need to be with mom. Well, I think he was out like getting dinner or something like that. Getting dinner, getting sundaes or whatever. Because that was like our weekend thing too. Sundays and ice cream and, you know, the good stuff. It was back in the 90s. I had a decent childhood, especially when my parents were together. But anyways, back to the story. So I tell him exactly that. I don't feel good, Dad. I don't feel good, and I want mom. And that's pretty much what it was. I didn't feel right, and I needed to be with my mother. And he says, okay, Kelly, but this is the last time that you're going to do this to me. So he comes and picks me up. And he has sundaes in his hand. So just like, you know, I told you. He has sundaes in the truck whenever he picks me up. And he tells me, I am going to go ahead and give you this to take to your bedroom. I want you to leave your mother alone. But she was all I wanted. What do you mean, leave her alone? Like, I'm coming home because I want to be with my mom. And he's like, Kelly, just not now. Just stop. I get home, and naturally, the house is pitch black. All the candles are lit. All the mirrors are covered in black. And my mother is sobbing on the couch, watching the news that Princess Diana had just died in a car accident. I know my dad told me not to, but I sat down beside her. And it was like she knew that I knew. And it was like I knew that she knew that I knew. And I remember my dad telling me, don't bug her. Give her time. Give her some space. But me being the defiant little shit that I am, says my stepdad, thanks Steve, I sat down next to her and I watched the news with her. And I think that was my first real grasp on death and loss. And how could this happen? She's the princess. How could this happen? But whenever I sat down next to her, I think she needed me more than I needed her, because she held me very tightly, and she rocked with me, and we rocked together. I cried with her. Not now, but it was very emotional. And to this day, I don't know what told me that I needed to get to my mother. Which brings me to number 9. and I'm going to call this one Phone's Ringing. So, this is back in a time when we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have GPS, we didn't have any kind of way to get a hold of anybody, and we basically just went off maps and the telephone book if we had one, and we didn't. So when my dad would take me to go find my friends, again, we live in the middle of nowhere, he would get so mad because we would get lost, and he is taking the directions of a 7-year-old child that's taking the directions of another 7-year-old child. It was just a mess. It was too much for my father's temper. So this particular weekend, I had arrangements. My sister had gone to stay with one of her friends, so I wanted to go stay with one of my friends. So I convinced my mom, I convinced my parents to let me go. Please, 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 let me go. So they let me go. And I asked, Mom, will you take me this time because Dad gets really mad if we get lost? And she was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So it's the weekend again. I had my bag packed. I had my favorite, like, scary story books that I loved so much. Like, you know, the skull with the pipe, that scary stories book. I had all of them. So I'm taking it all with me. I'm taking it all with me, and I get in the car with my mom, and we're driving around up and down dirt road after dirt road after dirt road, trying to get to this girl's house, and we just can't find it. And it is also in the middle of nowhere, and I'm not ready to give up. I'm like, no. She's like, Kelly, we can get ice cream tonight. We can get sundaes. We can put you a movie in. We can do whatever you want. And tomorrow you can stay the night with her. And it'll be Saturday. And y'all can have the whole day and night and everything together. And you can stay with her until Sunday. And I'm like, nope. Like, I'm not having it. Stacy got to go to her friend's house. I'm going to mine. So, yes. Kelly and Stacy like the Barbies. Thanks, Mom. So I let her go ahead and take me to get sundaes because it seems like that's really the only thing that's going to help at this point, even though I'm still not ready to give up. She can get her sundaes all she wants, but I'm gonna end up at my friend's house. I don't care. I do not care. I'm gonna go to my friend's house. So we get our sundaes and we're on our way back home. We get to be about a mile and a half maybe from the house. Yeah, I would say about a mile and a half from the house, because down my dirt road is like half a mile, and we're about, yeah. So we'll say a mile and a half. And all of a sudden I start hearing a phone ringing, and it's my house phone. Like, I mean, everybody has, at that time, everybody had their own house phone. Everybody had their own landline. You knew what your phone sounded like. And so it was my phone. And so I start telling my mom, Mom, the phone's ringing, the phone's ringing. And she's like, Kelly, just calm down. Like, we will get there, we'll get there. And I'm like, no, the phone's ringing. They're calling. They're trying to get a hold of us. It's Amanda. It's my friend. She's trying to get a hold of us. Like, hurry up. And she's like, Kelly, there's no way that the phone is ringing. And even if it was, there's no way that you can hear it from this distance. And I almost wanted to call this video, You Have the Memory of an Elephant and the Hearing of One Too. We pull down my dirt road. And I'm like, can you hurry? Can you hurry? It's still ringing, but it's about to stop. And she's like, Kelly, we're almost there. We're almost there. And I'm like, so we pull into my driveway and I'm like, she's leaving a message. She's leaving a message. And she's like, okay. So I get out of the truck and I am running. I could care less about the ice cream. I'm running to get inside. She's trying to hurry up and keep up with me. She's got 2 sundaes in her hand and she comes walking in the door. And right when we walk in the door, if you've ever had an answering machine at the end when they're done recording, we both walk in to hear the beep click. And when we checked the message, it was my friend's parent that was calling. That 2 minutes that it took to get home, it was in fact her calling. And Mom, I know you remember this. And it was her leaving a message giving us better directions to get to her house. So I got back in the truck and I went to my friend's house. And I think that was the first realization that my mom was like, there's no way. Like, I vividly remember her asking, how did you hear that? How did you hear that? And I was like, I could just hear it. I could just hear it. And like, you didn't hear it? And I just remember her being like, who are you and what have you done with my child? But this is what's gonna bring me to the final number 10. And like I said at the beginning of the video, if you have any kind of faint heart, if you are scared kind of easily, if you are not into spooky stories, this last one is not for you. So my sister, at this time, I had grown up. Some time had passed. I hadn't grown up, but I was a teenager. I was living with my mom at the time. We had our own apartment. It was a small little apartment, and we had our own little setup, and that was really probably the most stable the both of us had really ever been. I mean, like, I had my own setup, she had her own setup. It was just really nice. It was a nice apartment. My mom can make anything absolutely stunning, gorgeous. I mean, she really put in work in that apartment. And I loved it. It was so soothing. It was such a soothing. Even whenever I think back about that apartment and just how dim lit and soothing it was just nice. Not to mention, at the time, she worked for a fragrance company, so our house was always smelling Gucci. But my sister, the older sister that I've been talking about this entire time, see, she tends to block stuff out. That's her way of protecting herself, is to block stuff out. But I can't. I cannot block. As I'm telling you these stories, my lights are flickering. My door is moving. I can't block that stuff. Matter of fact, I want to find out why. Because it's right there in my face. The best I can do is absolutely protect myself. So, number 10 is called Sister's New Apartment. So we both live in the same apartment complex, but my sister had chose an apartment that was, I don't know, like 20 feet away from us. I could walk out my back door and walk down the back alley and walk straight to her back door. I mean, we were close. There was just like a little courtyard between us. We were really close. And she would use me to, not use me. She would have me come over. I mean, we were close, but she would also have me babysit her new son, and he was less than a year old, maybe 1 year old at the time. Makes it even creepier. And I would go over there and I would tell her, I remember like certain times I would tell her like, is your husband here? And she would be like, no. And I'm like, well, did you not just hear that? Like, that was clear as day. How did you not just hear that? And she blocked. That's when she told me, I don't pay attention to stuff like that. And if I do hear anything, I kind of just, I ignore it. And I understood that is a lot of people's ways of protecting themselves, is to just ignore it. I mean, it is what it is. And for certain people, that works. But for people like me who try to ignore it, it only makes the situation worse. So I'm hired as her personal babysitter for a very, very small baby. Most of the time he was asleep in his bedroom, in his crib, and they just needed to run to the grocery store real quick, or run to grab some errands real quick, or whatever it was. So this particular time, I had went over there, and like I said, I got really close with her little boy. I got really close with any baby boys that have been born in my family, and I just loved him. I mean, it felt like he was my baby. I was a teenager at the time, hormones going crazy. I loved him. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the book and now the movie The Giver, but I was in the middle of reading it in high school when some things came back, and I had a dream that something had happened, and I had taken my sister's baby and I was holding him. And back then I was riding BMX, and I was also playing basketball. I've always been an athlete, but at the time I was riding BMX. So I had this dream that I had taken him out of his crib, and I was holding him, and I was on my bike, and we were leaving. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew that I had to get away from wherever we were, and I had to rescue this baby. The next day, I go to school to read the end of The Giver. Spoiler alert, it's a boy, a teenage boy. And in the end, it's an abstract ending, but he's saving a baby. He's saving a baby in his... I had no idea how the ending was going to go. I had no idea. You know, because the class is long enough to where you have to read like 2 chapters to get to the ending. Anyways, I had predicted the ending of the book. And whenever it happened, I was in class, and I just remember being like so shocked. I couldn't believe it. Anyways, flash forward. It's my turn to babysit again. I am sitting there, and I am sitting there with her computer, and I'm listening to music like I usually do, and Hayden is sleeping in his room in his bed. I'm sitting there on my sister's bed, and I have her laptop open, and I'm just like looking at me, you know, MySpace, whipping my hair, doing my thing, and like listening, downloading music, doing whatever teenagers do at that time. And all of a sudden I hear a loud bang, and it comes from the baby's room. So I'm like, what the? So I jump up and I go into Hayden's room, and he's still sound asleep. So I'm like, what the heck? And I'm watching him to make sure that he's not like rolling over, like maybe like elbowing the wall or something, and that's what's making that loud noise. When all of a sudden my sister's computer pops on the music, and it's not the beginning of a song, it's not the end of a song, it's the Beatles song, but it only plays the lyrics. Jojo was a man that something something something. To this day, it still gives me so much of a bad feeling and a bad memory I love the Beatles, but I cannot finish those lyrics or that song because of what had happened in this apartment that I'm telling you about. So I'm like, stop. I stop. I run back in there so that I don't wake up Hayden. I stop the music, and I'm like, what the heck? That was freaking weird. I'm hearing banging on one end of the apartment, and then I'm hearing JoJo was a man on the other side of like, what the heck? And so it's not just the wall, it's also the electronics, and I'm like, man, weird. So I start getting a feeling in my stomach, and every time I get this feeling in my stomach, you better believe there's more to come. So I sit back down, and I have her computer, and it's sitting in front of me, and I start it back up, and I go back to doing whatever I'm doing, when the thing pops up again. JoJo was a man, and I shut it off. It was creeping me out. So by this time, I have powered off the computer. When I hear a second and louder bang come from the baby's room, I walk into the baby's room to make sure that he's okay. He's still asleep. When the computer powers itself back on to tell me a third time, JoJo was a man and it's trying to relay a message. I'm so scared at this point. I'm calling Stacy, when are you going to be back? I'm calling my sister, when are you going to be back? She's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong with the baby? And I'm like, no, the baby's fine. Something's wrong with your house. Something's wrong with your house. Da, 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 da. And it would, so many things would happen that I would be trying to tell her, but she was just like, Kelly, it's okay. I'll be there in just a minute. So she comes home. Flash forward a few nights later. I'm hanging out over at her house because I couldn't have my friends all ganging up in my house with my mom. So I go over to her house. She's hanging out. She's got a couple friends over. I come over. I got a couple of my friends over. We're all chilling, good vibes, listening to music, doing what we do. The baby's asleep, drinking, maybe whatever. Just hanging out, listening to music. Hanging out with my friends. She's hanging out with her friends. We're all getting along. Great. So the setup is, here is her room. Here's the baby's room. Here's a bathroom. And then the hallway leads into the living room. So for the amount of people that were jammed in that bedroom, it was probably, I don't know, like 10 people. Well, it was loud. Well, I go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, get done going to the bathroom, but I had heard so much ruckus going on in the living room behind me that I'm like, well, maybe they moved the party from my sister's room to the living room. I mean, maybe they want to, kind of keep the sound down for Hayden, the baby. And so I come out of the bathroom. Okay, I come out of the bathroom. I take a turn to go to the living room. I walk into the living room to realize that there's nobody in the living room. So I turn back around and I go to start walking into the hallway to get back to my sister's room when I walk into